last time anyone saw a human ship, Ambassador Relas had been a young student watching the broadcast from her dormitory. She remembered the footage clearly. Thousands of human vessels moving in perfect formation toward their home system, their running lights blinking like dying stars. Then the barrier went up, a wall of shimmering energy that wrapped around their entire solar system, and humanity was gone. That was 200 years ago. Now Relas stood on the observation deck of a Federation diplomatic cruiser staring at that same barrier. It looked like liquid silver stretched across the void, beautiful and terrifying and completely impenetrable. Dozens of expeditions had tried to breach it over the centuries. Probes vanished. Ships disappeared. Messages went unanswered. Earth had simply stopped existing as far as the galaxy was concerned. "Ambassador, we are in position," her aide said quietly. "Shall I begin the transmission?" Relas flexed her forearms nervously. The Senari people had evolved on a heavy-gravity world, and their bodies were built for strength and endurance. But standing here, facing the silence of humanity, she felt small. "Begin," she said. The message went out on every frequency the Federation knew. It explained everything. The hollow had come from the dark spaces between galaxies, a parasitic species that consumed organic matter and reproduced at terrifying speed. 47 worlds had fallen in 18 months. The combined fleets of every Federation species had failed to stop them. Billions were dead. Billions more would follow. The Federation needed help. The Federation needed humanity. The transmission ended and silence followed. Relas waited on that observation deck for 3 days. She slept in a chair, ate small meals brought by worried aides, and never took her eyes off the barrier. Other members of her delegation whispered that this was pointless. Humanity was gone or dead or simply did not care. The galaxy had exiled them after all. Why would they answer? On the 4th day, the barrier opened. It happened without warning. One moment the silver wall stood solid and eternal. The next, a circular opening appeared, perhaps a kilometer wide, showing the stars beyond. And through that opening came a single ship. Relas had seen thousands of spacecraft in her long career. Federation designs favored function over form, resulting in vessels that looked like floating industrial equipment. But this human ship was different. It was sleek and white, with flowing lines that seemed almost organic. No visible weapons ports. No exposed machinery. It looked less like a warship and more like a piece of art that happened to fly. The ship stopped a safe distance from the Federation convoy and transmitted a simple audio message. "This is Captain Leo Santos of the Human Defense Force vessel Patience. Humanity has received your request. We are prepared to hear your case. One representative may enter to speak with our government. They must come alone and unarmed. They will not be harmed. Please respond within 1 hour." The transmission ended. Relas felt her heart's pounding. 200 years of silence, and this was all they got. A polite invitation with strict conditions. No emotion, no questions, just cold professionalism. Her security chief immediately protested. "Ambassador, this is obviously a trap. You cannot go alone into human space. We have no intelligence about what they have become. For all we know, they have devolved into savages." "Savages do not build ships like that," Relas replied quietly. "And we have no choice. The Hollow will reach the inner Federation worlds within 6 months. If humanity can help us, I must ask. If they cannot, then we are no worse than before." She gathered nothing but the clothes on her back. No weapons, no communication devices, no recording equipment. The humans had asked for one representative, alone and unarmed, and that is what they would get. The shuttle ride to the human vessel felt like the longest journey of her life. As she approached, she noticed details she had missed before. The hull was covered in tiny symbols, hundreds of thousands of them, too small to read from a distance. Names, perhaps, or prayers, or warnings. A docking port opened, and Relas stepped aboard. The interior was clean and bright, with soft lighting and walls painted in calming colors. A human woman waited for her, tall and dark-skinned, wearing a simple gray uniform with no visible rank insignia. "Ambassador Rilas," the woman said. Her voice was flat, neither welcoming nor hostile. "I am Director Amara Okonkwo of Earth's External Affairs Division. Please follow me." They walked through corridors that hummed with quiet power. Rilas saw other humans going about their business, all of them pausing briefly to look at her with expressions she could not read. Curiosity, hatred, pity, she could not tell. "You voted for our exile," Okonkwo said suddenly, not breaking stride. "I read your speech. You called humanity a cancer that needed to be cut out before it spread." Rilas felt her blood chill. "That was 200 years ago. I was young and foolish and afraid." "We remember," Okonkwo replied. "We remember everything." The ship passed through the barrier, and Rilas saw Earth for the first time. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds swirling over a world that looked peaceful and alive. Beyond it, she could see Mars, no longer red but now showing patches of blue and green. Massive structures orbited both worlds, and ships moved between them in steady streams. Humanity had not died in exile. They had grown. "Welcome to Saul," Okonkwo said, and for the first time there was something in her voice that might have been pride. "Let us show you what you threw away." The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Rilas pressed her face against the viewport like a child seeing the stars for the first time. Below her, forests stretched across continents that Federation records had marked as polluted wastelands. Rivers sparkled clean and bright. Cities rose in clusters, surrounded by green spaces, connected by transportation networks that moved without visible roads or rails. "Your record said Earth was dying," Rilas murmured. "It was," Okonkwo replied. "When you exiled us, we had a choice. We could rage against the galaxy, build weapons, plot revenge, or we could look inward and fix what was broken. We chose the second path." The shuttle landed in a city that had no name Rilas recognized. Tall buildings of glass and living plants rose around a central plaza where hundreds of humans walked, talked, and lived their lives. Children played in fountains. Old people sat on benches reading books or watching the sky. No one seemed rushed or stressed or afraid. "Where are your soldiers?" Rilas asked. "Everywhere," Okonkwo said. "And nowhere. Every adult human receives basic defense training, but we have not needed standing armies for a long time. When you have no enemies, you do not need warriors. The Hollow are your enemies now." "The Hollow are everyone's enemies. That is different." They walked through the city, and Rilas noticed something strange. People looked at her without fear or hatred. Some even nodded politely, as if a four-armed alien walking their streets was perfectly normal. Children pointed and asked their parents questions, but no one ran or screamed or called for security. "Your people do not seem surprised to see me," Rilas said. "We have watched the galaxy since the barrier went up," Okonkwo explained. "We have seen everything, every war, every treaty, every birth and death. We know your species better than you know yourselves. We simply chose not to participate." They entered a building that looked like a museum. Inside, the walls were covered with screens displaying text, images, and video recordings. Rilas walked closer and felt her heart stop. She was looking at her own face, 200 years younger, standing before the Galactic Assembly and delivering her speech calling for humanity's exile. "This is the memorial of rejection," Okonkwo said. "Every anti-human speech is preserved here, every vote against Earth, every slur, every insult, every act of discrimination. We collected them all." Rilas walked through the memorial in growing horror. She saw recordings of Federation news anchors calling humans dangerous animals. She saw political cartoons depicting humans as monsters. She saw footage of human diplomats being spat upon, human merchants being denied service, human travelers being turned away from ports. And she saw the final vote. 2,347 species voting yes to exile, 12 voting no. Humanity had not been given a voice. "Why do you keep this?" Rilas whispered. "Because forgetting is easy," Okonkwo replied. "We could erase these records and pretend the exile never happened. We could teach our children that we left by choice, but that would be a lie, and lies make weak foundations. Our children learn the truth. They learn what was done to their ancestors, and they learn to be better than those who did it." A group of young humans walked past, school children on what appeared to be a field trip. A teacher was explaining the memorial to them, pointing at various displays. The children listened with serious faces, asking questions, taking notes. "Do they hate us?" Rilas asked, watching the children. "When they learn what we did, do they hate us?" Okonkwo considered the question. "Some do, for a time. Anger is natural, but we teach them that hatred consumes the one who carries it. We teach them to remember without becoming what they remember. Most of them grow past the anger into something else." "What?" "Pity," Okonkwo said. "They pity the galaxy that was so afraid of us that it threw away its greatest ally." That hurt more than hatred would have. Rilas had expected rage, accusations, demands for apology. She had prepared speeches of contrition and offers of reparation. But pity was something else entirely. Pity meant humanity had moved on while the Federation remained stuck in the past. They left the memorial and walked to a park where a massive tree grew, its branches spreading wide enough to shade hundreds of people. Families sat beneath it, sharing meals and laughter. "This tree was planted on the day of the exile," Okonkwo said. "We call it the walking tree because it reminds us that we walked away rather than fight. Some say we were cowards, others say we were wise. The debate continues." "What do you say?" Rilas asked. Okonkwo looked at the tree for a long moment. "I say we are still here. Our world is healed. Our people are unified. We have technology the Federation cannot imagine and peace the Federation has never known. If that is cowardice, then I am proud to be a coward." She turned to face Rilas directly, and for the first time there was something like emotion in her eyes. Not warmth, exactly, but perhaps the possibility of warmth, buried deep beneath 2 centuries of memory. "Tomorrow you will address our global assembly and make your case for why humanity should save the galaxy that tried to kill us. I suggest you think carefully about what you will say. We remember everything, Ambassador. Every promise made and broken. Every lie told in the name of peace. You cannot deceive us. You can only tell the truth and hope it is enough." Rilas nodded slowly. She had come here expecting to negotiate with savages or beg forgiveness from saints. Instead, she found something far more complicated. She found humans who remembered everything, forgave nothing, and somehow remained kind despite it all. She had one chance to convince them. She could not afford to waste it. The Global Assembly Hall was nothing like the Galactic Senate. Where the Senate was cold and massive, designed to intimidate, this human building was warm and circular, with seats arranged so everyone could see everyone else. Natural light poured through a glass ceiling. Plants grew along the walls. It felt less like a government chamber and more like a community gathering place. Rilas stood at the center, surrounded by 5,000 human representatives from every region of Earth, every colony in the solar system, and every orbital station in between. They watched her in complete silence, their faces unreadable. She had prepared no speech. Anything written would sound hollow. Instead, she simply told them the truth. "The hollow came 18 months ago," she began. "They emerged from the void between galaxies, a species we had never seen before. They do not communicate. They do not negotiate. They consume. Organic matter, technology, entire worlds. Nothing stops them." She activated a holographic display showing the spread of the invasion. Red marks indicated fallen worlds. The pattern was clear and terrifying, spreading inward toward the heart of Federation space. 47 worlds gone, 12 billion dead, Our fleets have failed. Our weapons are useless. Our scientists have no answers. At our current rate of loss, the Federation will cease to exist within 2 years." She paused, letting the numbers sink in. "I am not here to apologize for the exile. An apology would be meaningless after 200 years. I am not here to promise you rewards or honors or restoration of your place in the galaxy. Such promises would be lies, because the Federation I represent may not exist long enough to keep them." The silence in the hall deepened. "I am here because innocent people are dying. Children who were not born when your ancestors were exiled. Species who voted against the exile but were overruled. Entire civilizations that had nothing to do with the decision but will be destroyed alongside everyone else." She looked around the room, meeting human eyes one by one. "You owe us nothing. We know this. You have every right to watch the galaxy burn and feel it is justice. But I am asking you to be better than we were. I am asking you to save people who do not deserve to be saved, simply because you can." The silence stretched on. Then a human stood. He was old, with white hair and a face lined by decades of life. His name appeared on a display near him: Representative Kwame Asante, African Union. "You exiled us for having warships," he said. His voice was calm but carried easily through the hall. "You said our military made us dangerous. Tell me, Ambassador, where are your warships now?" "Destroyed or scattered," Relas admitted. "The hollow overwhelmed them." Another representative stood, a young woman with red hair. "You called us violent. You said our aggressive nature was a threat to galactic peace. Did your peaceful nature save your people?" "No." An older woman rose. "You said the galaxy was better without humanity. Is it?" Relas felt the weight of 2 centuries pressing down on her. "No, it is not." More representatives stood with more questions. Each one was a knife, cutting through the justifications the Federation had used to exile Earth. Each one forced Relas to admit what everyone already knew. The exile had been wrong. Not just morally wrong, but practically wrong. The galaxy had thrown away its strongest defender out of fear and prejudice. Finally, Admiral Yuki Tanaka rose from her seat. She was a small woman with gray-streaked black hair, but when she spoke, the entire hall fell silent. "We have watched the Hollow for 3 years, Tanaka said. "We detected them before they reached Federation space. We studied their movement patterns, their feeding habits, their reproduction cycles. We know things about them that your scientists have not yet discovered." Relas felt hope spark in her chest. "You have been researching them. Then you might have a way to stop them." "We do," Tanaka confirmed. "The Hollow have a weakness. Their hive structure depends on specific signal frequencies for coordination. Disrupt those frequencies, and they become disorganized, vulnerable. We developed the technology to do this within 6 months of detecting them." "Then why did you not help?" Relas asked, her voice cracking with frustration. "Billions died while you watched and did nothing." The hall erupted in murmurs. Tanaka waited for silence before responding. "We were never asked," she said simply. 200 years ago, the galaxy told us to leave. We left. We kept our barrier closed because the galaxy did not want us. We watched your people die because your people told us they did not need us." She paused. "We are not cruel, Ambassador. We are simply obedient. You wanted us gone, and we went." The logic was terrible and perfect. Humanity had done exactly what the Federation demanded. They had left. They had stayed away. They had not interfered in galactic affairs, and now the galaxy was paying the price for that demand. Representative Asante spoke again. "The question before us is simple. Do we help those who hurt us? Do we save lives that could have been saved years ago if the galaxy had simply asked? Do we put aside 2 centuries of justified anger to be heroes for people who called us monsters?" The debate that followed was fierce. Some representatives argued that helping the Federation would only encourage future mistreatment. Others said that innocent lives mattered more than old grudges. Some wanted conditions attached to any aid. Others said conditions would make them no better than the Federation itself. Relas watched and listened, unable to speak, as humanity decided her people's fate. Hours passed. The sun moved across the glass ceiling. Finally, Representative Assant called for a vote. All in favor of providing military assistance to the Galactic Federation. Hands rose across the hall. Relas tried to count but lost track. There were so many. All opposed. More hands, fewer. But still significant. All abstaining. A small number. Assant looked at the tallying system and nodded slowly. The motion passes. Humanity will help the Galactic Federation against the hollow threat. He turned to Relas with an expression she could not read. Congratulations, Ambassador. You will get your war. I hope you understand what you are asking for. Relas felt relief flooding through her, but Assant's words left her uneasy. What exactly had she asked for? And what would it cost? 3 days after the vote, while humanity prepared its fleet, a transmission arrived at Earth's communications center. It came from deep in Federation space, heavily encrypted, and marked with diplomatic codes that had not been used in 2 centuries. Director Okonkwo examined the message with suspicion. It is from someone named Historian Pelham. He claims he witnessed the original exile and wants to address humanity directly. He says he has information we need to hear. Relas recognized the name immediately. Pelham is real. He was old even during the exile. He must be ancient now, kept alive by medical technology. He was one of the 12 who voted against humanity's removal. Why would he contact us now? Admiral Tanaka asked. I do not know, Relas admitted. But if he voted to keep humanity in the Federation, he may be an ally. After much debate, Okonkwo agreed to receive Pelham's transmission. The old historian's face appeared on screens across Earth, a wrinkled being with pale blue skin and eyes that had seen far too much history. People of Earth, Pelham began, his voice trembling with age but clear with purpose. I am 173 years old. I have watched the galaxy change and remain the same, and I have carried a burden for 2 centuries that I must finally release. He paused to gather his strength. I was there when the Federation voted to exile your species. I stood in the chamber and watched 2,000 representatives raise their hands against you, and I did something that I have regretted every day since. I stayed silent. The transmission showed Pelham pulling out old data crystals, physical storage devices that predated modern technology. These contain records that the Federation suppressed after the exile, records that show what humanity truly was before fear consumed us. The first recording showed human doctors on a plague-stricken world, working without sleep for days to save alien lives. They wore protective suits that could not fully shield them from the disease, and several humans died during the relief effort. The Federation news had reported this as humans spreading the plague, not fighting it. The second recording showed human engineers rebuilding an alien city after a massive earthquake. They worked alongside the local population, teaching them construction techniques that would make future buildings safer. The Federation had claimed humans were exploiting the disaster for profit. The third recording was the most painful. It showed human soldiers defending an alien colony from raiders, outnumbered and outgunned, fighting to the last person to protect civilians who were not their own species. The Federation had called this an act of human aggression. There are hundreds more, Pelham said. Thousands. Every act of human kindness was twisted or erased. Every sacrifice was forgotten. The galaxy did not exile Earth because humanity was evil. The galaxy exiled Earth because humanity made everyone else look small. He leaned closer to the camera, his old eyes bright with unshed tears. I was afraid to share these records, afraid of what the Federation would do to me, afraid of being called a human sympathizer, which was the worst insult of that era. So I buried them and told myself it did not matter. But it did matter. It mattered to every human who was called a monster for trying to help. It mattered to every child who grew up believing their species was a cancer. Okonkwo watched with her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Beside her, Tanaka's face had gone hard as stone. I am sharing these records now because I am old and dying and the truth should outlive my cowardice, Pelham continued. But also because I want humanity to know something. Not everyone in the galaxy hated you. Some of us knew the exile was wrong. Some of us fought against it and lost. Some of us have spent 200 years wishing we had been braver. The transmission ended. Silence filled the room. Okonkwo was the first to speak. Can we verify these records? Technical teams analyzed the data for hours. The crystals were genuine, dated correctly, with no signs of tampering. The events they showed had really happened. The Federation had really lied. Word spread across Earth and through the solar system. People gathered to watch the recordings, seeing for the first time the truth that had been hidden from the entire galaxy. Human doctors who died saving alien lives. Human engineers who rebuilt alien homes. Human soldiers who sacrificed everything for people who would later vote to exile their species. The reaction was not what Relas expected. She had thought humans would be angry, that the revelation of the Federation's lies would fuel demands for revenge or reparations. Instead, she saw something else. She saw humans watching these recordings with quiet pride. Not pride in being vindicated, but pride in knowing their ancestors had been good people who did good things, regardless of how the galaxy remembered them. In the memorial of rejection, curators began adding the new records alongside the old ones. Now visitors could see both the hatred directed at humanity and the kindness humanity had shown despite that hatred. The contrast was devastating. Admiral Tanaka found Relas standing in front of a display, showing human soldiers defending an alien nursery. Your people killed these soldiers, Tanaka said quietly. Not the raiders, your people. The Federation forces arrived and assumed the humans were the attackers. They were executed on the spot. Relas could not speak. The weight of history pressed down on her until she could barely breathe. We knew, Tanaka continued. We always knew the truth, but hearing it from one of your own, seeing the records preserved by Federation hands, that means something. It means not everyone was our enemy. It means there was goodness in the galaxy even then. She turned to face Relas directly. We are going to save your Federation, Ambassador. Not because you deserve it, but because those soldiers deserved better than they got. Because the doctors and engineers and all the forgotten humans who died helping strangers deserve to have their legacy honored. We will be what they were. We will help those who do not deserve help. And when it is over, the galaxy will know what it threw away. Relas nodded slowly, understanding finally why humanity had voted to help. It was not mercy or forgiveness or even strategic calculation. It was something simpler and more powerful. It was humanity refusing to let fear and hatred define them, even when fear and hatred were all they had ever received. The barrier opened for the second time in 200 years, and the galaxy held its breath. Federation sensor stations detected the human fleet before they saw it, energy readings that made no sense, mass signatures that should have been impossible, and then, emerging from the silver wall like ghosts from another age, came the ships. They were beautiful and terrifying, white hulls that seemed to glow with internal light. No visible weapons, no exposed machinery, no hard angles or aggressive design choices. They looked like creatures of myth, beings that had evolved beyond the need for ugliness. There were over 300 of them, moving in perfect formation, silent and graceful. At the front of the fleet flew the flagship, a vessel larger than any station in Federation space. Its name was painted on the hull in every language the galaxy had ever known. Patience. Admiral Tanaka commanded from the bridge, watching the tactical displays with calm eyes. Beside her stood Captain Leo Santos, the first human to make contact with the Federation, now serving as her tactical advisor. "We are receiving transmissions from Federation Command," Santos reported. "They want us to coordinate with their remaining fleet at the Brennan system." "How many ships do they have left?" 47, mostly damaged. Tanaka nodded. "Set course for Brennan and open a channel to all Federation frequencies. Let them see us coming." The human fleet moved through Federation space like a parade through a ghost town. Every station they passed had been evacuated. Every world showed signs of desperate preparation for an attack that everyone expected to lose. And everywhere, on every screen and every communication device, beings stopped to watch the humans pass. Rilas traveled with the fleet, serving as a liaison between humanity and the Federation forces. She watched the reaction of her own people with mixed emotions. Some Federation officers greeted the humans with visible relief, grateful that help had finally arrived. Others watched with suspicion and resentment, unable to accept assistance from the species they had cast out. A few even transmitted angry messages, calling the humans invaders and demanding they leave. The humans ignored all of it. They simply kept flying, steady and silent, toward the front lines. They arrived at the Brennan system to find chaos. A hollow swarm had broken through the defensive perimeter and was moving toward a civilian evacuation convoy. Over 2 million refugees were packed into transport ships that had no weapons and no speed. Federation warships tried to intercept the swarm but were too damaged and too few. The math was simple and terrible. The transports would be caught. Everyone would die. Tanaka assessed the situation in seconds. "Captain Santos, take the forward wing. Cut between the swarm and the convoy. Everyone else follow my lead." The human ships accelerated beyond anything Federation sensors could track. In moments, they had positioned themselves as a wall between the hollow and the helpless transports. The hollow did not slow down. They never did. Billions of parasitic organisms linked into a single hungry mind, they simply swept toward the nearest food source, which now happened to be human warships. Tanaka gave one simple order: activate disruption field. Every human ship began broadcasting a signal on frequencies the Federation had never detected. The effect on the hollow was immediate and devastating. Their perfect coordination shattered. Swarm formations collapsed into chaotic masses. Organisms that had moved as one suddenly moved as millions, crashing into each other, losing all sense of direction. Then the weapons fired. The Federation had wondered why human ships had no visible weapons ports. Now they understood. The entire hull of each vessel was a weapon, capable of projecting energy in any direction at any angle. Beams of light swept through the disoriented swarm, vaporizing thousands of hollow organisms per second. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. When it was over, the swarm was gone. Completely gone. Not scattered or retreating, but destroyed. 2 million refugees watched from their transport ships as humanity announced its return to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. Santos broadcast on open channels, his voice calm and professional. "This is the Human Defense Force. The evacuation convoy is secure. All Federation vessels, please transmit damage reports and casualty lists. We have medical teams standing by." The response was silence at first. Then slowly, transmissions began coming in. Some were formal military reports. Others were simply thanks, choked with emotion, from officers who had expected to die that day. Rilas found Admiral Tanaka on the bridge, still watching the displays where the swarm had been. "You made it look easy," Rilas said quietly. "It was not easy," Tanaka replied. "It was prepared. We have been preparing for 200 years, building ships, developing weapons, training crews. We knew someday the galaxy would need us. We just did not know when. You could have let them die. No one would have blamed you." Tanaka turned to face her, and for the first time, Relas saw something soft in the Admiral's hard eyes. My grandmother told me a story once about her grandmother who was alive during the exile. She was a doctor on a relief mission when the vote happened. She had been saving lives, and suddenly she was told she was a monster who needed to be removed from the galaxy. Tanaka looked out at the stars. She came home and never practiced medicine again. She spent the rest of her life wondering if she should have fought back, should have argued, should have done something. My grandmother said she died with regret in her heart. The Admiral returned her attention to Relas. I will not die with regret. I will not watch innocent people suffer because their ancestors hurt mine. That is not who we are. That is not who we ever were. On the refugee transports, children pressed their faces to windows, watching the human ships that had saved them. They would tell their children about this day, and their children would tell theirs. And someday, perhaps, the galaxy would remember what it had tried to forget. Humanity had walked away once, now they had walked back. 4 months after humanity returned to the stars, the Hollow were gone. It happened faster than anyone had predicted. Human disruption technology spread through the Federation fleet, turning every surviving warship into an effective weapon against the swarm. Human tactics replaced the failed strategies of the past. Human commanders led joint operations that pushed the Hollow back, system by system, until the last swarm was cornered in a dead system at the edge of known space. Admiral Tanaka gave the order herself. The final swarm was destroyed in a flash of light that could be seen across 3 star systems. The war was over. The victory celebration was held on the Federation capital world, a massive gathering of representatives from every surviving species. Banners hung from buildings. Music played in the streets. Billions watched on screens across the galaxy as High Counselor Brennies prepared to address the assembly. Brennies was old and tired. He had led the Federation through its darkest period, watching worlds fall and species die while he could do nothing. But today he stood tall, ready to acknowledge those who had saved them all. "We gather to honor humanity," Brennies announced, his voice carrying across the assembly hall. 2 centuries ago, this body made a terrible mistake. We exiled a species out of fear, calling them dangerous, calling them violent, calling them a threat to peace. We were wrong. He paused, letting the admission hang in the air. When darkness came, when all seemed lost, humanity answered our call. They did not seek revenge for past wrongs. They did not demand apologies or reparations. They simply came, fought, and saved us. There are no words adequate to express our gratitude. Brennies turned to face Director Okonkwo, who stood with the human delegation near the front of the hall. "On behalf of the Galactic Federation, I formally offer Earth full reinstatement to our community. All previous resolutions regarding humanity are hereby rescinded. Earth will be granted a permanent seat on the High Council, with full voting rights and honors befitting the species that saved us all." The assembly erupted in applause. Species that had voted for the exile now stood and cheered for humanity's return. It was everything Relas had hoped for when she first approached the barrier. But Okonkwo did not smile. She did not accept. She simply waited for the applause to fade, then stepped forward to speak. "High Counselor, the Federation's offer is generous. It acknowledges wrongs and attempts to make them right. Humanity appreciates this gesture." She paused and the hall fell silent. "But we must decline." Gasps rippled through the assembly. Brennies looked stunned. Even some members of the human delegation seemed surprised. "We did not fight to rejoin your club," Okonkwo continued, her voice steady and clear. "We did not save your people to earn a seat at your table. We fought because innocents were dying and we could stop it. That is who humans are. That is who we have always been." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of species who had celebrated humanity's exile and now wanted to celebrate its return. 200 years ago, this assembly decided humanity did not belong. You may have changed your minds, but we have not changed ours. We belong where we choose to belong, and we choose to remain apart. Brenny struggled to respond. Director, please, we are offering full restoration, everything that was taken from you. Nothing was taken from us, Okonkwo replied. We took it back ourselves. We built our own world, our own future, our own identity. We do not need the Federation to validate our existence. She softened slightly, seeing the genuine distress on Brenny's face. This is not punishment. This is not revenge. This is simply choice. Humanity will maintain diplomatic relations with the Federation. We will trade goods and knowledge. We will assist in future crises if asked. But we will not return to a system that once cast us out for being ourselves. Not because we hate you, but because we have learned to value our independence. The hall was utterly silent. Perhaps someday, generations from now, humanity will choose differently. Perhaps our children's children will see a galaxy worthy of full partnership. But that day is not today. Today, we walk our own path. She turned and walked back to the human delegation. The assembly watched in stunned silence as she passed. Rilas followed Okonkwo outside, finding her standing on a balcony overlooking the celebration below. Humans and aliens mingled in the streets, sharing food and drinks and stories. For a moment, it almost looked like the exile had never happened. You surprised them, Rilas said. I surprised myself, Okonkwo admitted. Part of me wanted to accept. Part of me wanted to sit in that council chamber and remind them every day what they did. But that would have been petty, and we are better than petty. She watched a group of human children playing with alien children in the street below, laughing together like they had known each other their whole lives. Will humanity ever truly forgive us? Rilas asked. Okonkwo considered the question for a long time. Forgiveness takes time. You have perhaps a few centuries of exile to wait. Despite everything, Rilas found herself smiling. Is that a joke? Possibly. Okonkwo almost smiled back. I am told humans are known for our sense of humor. Below them, the celebration continued. Somewhere in the crowd, Admiral Tanaka was being surrounded by grateful officers from a dozen species. Captain Santos was explaining human music to a group of fascinated alien children. Historian Pelham, kept alive long enough to see this day, watched it all with tears streaming down his ancient face. The barrier around Earth's solar system remained open, a door rather than a wall. Ships could come and go freely now. Trade would flow. Knowledge would be shared. But Earth remained apart, neither above nor below the galaxy, simply walking its own path. As it always had. As it always would. Rilas stayed on that balcony until the stars came out, watching humanity celebrate a victory that most species would have called impossible. They had been exiled, forgotten, written out of galactic history, and they had returned not as conquerors or victims, but as something far more powerful. They had returned as themselves. And that, perhaps, was the most human thing of all.